Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. Today we get the opportunity to speak with the CEO of the largest residential plumbing company in California. John Akhoian joins us today to talk all about how he grew his empire. So John dropped out of high school when he was 17 years old after his father passed away, and immediately he understood he was no longer going to pursue his father's dream of him becoming an attorney. Instead, he jumped right into plumbing to help support his family. And he never looked back. He learned the trade. He started a plumbing business. He bought a plumbing franchise and ran that for 20 years. Then he sold that and started what's now known as Rooter Hero Plumbing. Not to mention writing several books along the way. Listen in as John shares the wisdom he has learned over the years about mindset, work ethic, culture, and of course, business. Make sure you have a pen and paper handy for this one, guys. You're going to need it. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel and on our website at blueisthenewwhite.com to receive all the latest updates. You can now find this podcast on iHeartRadio, SiriusXM, and Pandora. As always, we rely on word of mouth from our listeners to further the mission. So, if you enjoy this episode, please do me a favor, rate it, review it, and share it with your friends. The future generations of tradespeople depend on it. They depend on you. So thank you again and enjoy this episode of Blue is the New White with John Akhoian. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. I'm here with an awesome guest today, the CEO of Rooter Hero. John, welcome to the show, man.
Oh, glad to be here. Thank you, Josh.
I am very, very excited about this conversation. Anybody who's from, the Southern California area, I'm sure has heard about your company. We just had a conversation earlier about how it's just in California, and I saw your billboards around town. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to not only speak with you one-on-one, but to share that conversation with our audience as well. So if you wouldn't mind, for those who don't know who you are, could you start by just kind of sharing who you are, where you come from, how you got to where you are today? Who is John with Rooter Hero?
Great. Well, thank you, Josh. Yeah, I'm John. I'm the CEO of Rooter Hero. I'm a co-founder of the company, and I got into the skills trade when I was 17 years old as a plumber. Worked with a family friend for about a year or two, and then eventually started my own plumbing company. The first company I started was called High Quality Plumbing, and I just basically took on any type of plumbing job I can get. Eventually bought a franchise. I saved some money. I was going to buy like a fast food franchise. I went and bought a franchising magazine, and I saw a little ad for a plumbing franchise. I'm like, this might be something interesting. I'm a plumber. There's a plumbing franchise. So I ended up making a phone call. Well, long story longer, I ended up buying a franchise, a plumbing franchise, and I did that for about 20 years. They have 10-year agreements. So I, quickly, bought one area, then bought another area, extended it, and bought a second franchise and a third. And eventually, I just didn't see much growth opportunity in the franchising system. So I sold my franchises, I got out, and then I started Rooter Hero Plumbing. And that was in 2011, roughly around 2011. And we quickly grew from there, and now we're the largest residential plumbing company in the state of California.
Wow. Man, that is a lot in a very little amount of time. Thank you for sharing all that. I've got some notes here that I wrote down. I kind of want to pick it apart a little bit if it's all right with you.
Sure.
So you said you started in the trade at 17 years old, right? So I would imagine you were still in high school at that point.
I dropped out of high school at my senior grade level. I was a very, very, very good D student, and school wasn't really for me. So when my dad passed away, he was a truck driver. I was 17. I was really, not engaged in going to school, but he always wanted me to be an attorney. And I was like, all right, well, let's see where this goes. I'm going to do my best to fulfill my dad's dream and be an attorney. When he passed away, I basically, the family was grieving. I didn't go to school for about a month. And, when I went back, I was like, hey, you're not going to graduate anyway. So, just go work, So my mom's like, listen, if you're not going to go to school, at least, get into the trades. I know you can put food on the table being in the trades. And I took my mom's advice and I went into the trades, and I said,
wow.
And, thanked my mom the other day. I said, Mom, that was good advice. Thank you. Thanks for, telling me to get into the trades.
Yeah. No, and thank you for sharing that. That's very interesting. And of course, this is ultimately a testament to the power of the skilled trades. Not that we're advocating anybody, drop out of high school or anything like that, but I mean, it is an incredible story, and I want to touch on it a little bit. So clearly, it seems like at this point, when you were 17 and you had that traumatic, I would imagine it was very traumatic for you at 17, losing your dad. Terribly sorry to hear that. College wasn't even really in the question for you at that point, was it?
No, the only reason I was going to go to college was, to fulfill my dad's dream of me being an attorney, and I really didn't, want to go to school. I didn't really like the way school was. It was just, I guess I had, I just couldn't sit in a classroom and just, listen to a lecture for so long. I didn't mind learning because I've learned that I'm a lifelong learner. I read a lot of books. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I've got, hundreds of audiobooks in my Audible account that I've gone through. So it wasn't about like learning and growing. It was just about how they were teaching that just didn't resonate with me. And, after 17, I kind of hung out. When my dad died, I was working as a plumber helper, and I hung out with the wrong crowd, and I just wasn't on the right track. And, eventually I met my wife today, who was my girlfriend back then, and she had her head on her shoulders and kind of gave me some good advice. And her dad was a really solid man. I thank him because he was sort of like a father to me after my dad died. And I married her, and, I just married into a great family and got really lucky and, fixed my life around. I, worked really hard. One thing I learned from my dad, at an early age was to put in, roll up your sleeves and put in long hours. Watching my dad, work, a guy would leave on, a Monday morning, and we'd see him on a Saturday. He'd come back from, driving his truck, and then he'd make my brother and I change his oil and tune up the engine and wash the truck. And we're talking about an 18-wheeler. So it was an all-day event, right?
Wow.
So the only time we got to spend with our dad. And as we were doing all of this stuff, he was showing us, how to work with our hands, how to be a mechanic. So it wasn't hard for me to learn plumbing because it was hey, I was working on, semi engines, when I was 13, 12, 14,
Yeah.
So it was it was something I was able to do.
Wow, that's amazing. So even though he wanted you to be an attorney, little did he know that he was setting you up to be an incredible entrepreneur and, plumber by trade, right? Which I find that amazing because, there's a lot of rhetoric out there now, a lot of stereotypes out there now and stigmas, around working with your hands, and, that there has to be this either or, right? You either go to college or you either work with or you work with your hands, and I'm a big advocate for, listen, kind of like you, I'm a lifelong learner, right? And I'm not anti-college or anti-education. I'm pro the right education for the right individual, right? And there's so many different ways that people learn. There's so many different ways that people define success. There's so many different, interests that people have and passions that they have. How can we pretend like this path is the path? So being able to have that skill set of working with your hands, I mean, proved incredibly valuable for somebody like you who completely altered the trajectory of your life without planning to.
Yeah, yeah. And then I learned that there was people that were actually better than I was working with their hands. Later when I did, I remember when I was trying to figure out if I'm in the right, like I was in my mid 20s and I'm like, I wonder if I'm in the right career path, right? So I remember reading a book, and in the book there was a agency back then. Now they have it online. You could do all these profile tests and all this stuff. It'll tell you what your strengths and weaknesses are. And it was called Johnson O'Connor Foundation. I remember this was the old version of the Colbys and the discs and all of the online stuff we do. And it was a 3-day event, right? So I'm like, I spent like a couple $1,000s back then, which was a lot of money. I'm in this thing for 3 days, and they got me picking up little needles and dropping it in these little things. And I'm taking these, reading and doing all this stuff. And there's this researcher looking at me and grading my tests and all of this stuff. And then at the end, they sit with me and they're like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "Well, I'm in the plumbing business." Like, "Well, thank God you're not a surgeon, because you'd probably kill somebody." I'm like, "Oh, that's good to know." They said, you're basically, and they said, "What do you do now?" And I was like managing the business back then, because I had a team and they were out there doing the work. They're like, "Well, you're not going to be the best plumber in the world because you're not as good as some people might be with working with their hands. But if you're managing people and other people, then that's what you should be doing, because that's your strength." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, great." And they said, "It doesn't matter what the business is, just keep doing what you're doing." And when I was younger, I trained a friend of mine, plumbing as well. And I'm kidding you not, like I was doing it for years. And this guy in like 4 months, he was repiping houses faster than me. He was like doing stuff better than me. And I'm like, "What the hell is this, dude? This guy's like a machine."
Yeah.
And I learned that, this guy is more of a mechanic than I am. I'm not like that great of a mechanic, but I had enough skills and wants to, like do the work in the beginning to get it as far as I got it. And then after that, my natural ability of like working through other people kicked in. And that's kind of what I used to grow the business.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think that there's a lot to be learned from what you just said, and because I'm much of the same way. Like I was in the field for 10 years. Now it wasn't plumbing, right? My trade is commercial kitchen equipment. So ovens, fryers, stoves, that kind of stuff. So there's a plumbing element, right? I would plumb the units into the gas lines and stuff like that. But, I worked a lot more with combustion and electric and stuff like that, but kind of the same. I was good at what I did, but I know people now that could work circles around me when I was in the field, and I love those people to be honest, because, my natural strengths were elsewhere in the business, and thank goodness, right? Because it's, that's what we do. We find those strengths and we lean into them. We learn, right? As lifelong learners, we continue to hone the skills that we already know are valuable, and work through people. I really like that, that phrase that you said there. So I've got a question about plumbing. So at 17 years old, you got into plumbing. You started your first company, High Quality Plumbing. Then you bought a plumbing franchise, right? What was it about plumbing that made you stay in this trade, right? You said that there was a point there where, you weren't sure you had another option, but you stayed in the plumbing sector. What about it? Why?
I don't know. I mean, I just enjoyed being out in the field. I enjoyed the freedom of not being behind a desk, and not working like in an office job. And then I also loved the fact that I had a lot of windshield time, because when I was like, had my business and I was going from like one call to the next, mainly I was working on apartment buildings and doing service and repair. I used to listen to audiobooks, and I used to love having that time in my truck where I could just absorb all of this information, and the freedom, to not be behind the desk, to be out in the open. I felt like a wild animal, out there. It was like, to me, it was like, it felt like a lot of great freedom, you know,
Yeah.
uh, rather than being cooped up. I kind of compared, you know, like office jobs of being in a classroom kind of deal
Sure.
where I'm stuck behind a desk, you know, like I don't really, and until today, I just really I don't even have an office in our office building. You know, my office is my backpack. You know, my laptop comes out wherever I'm at. That's where I work. And I don't have a place. Even like I went in today and I ended up working out of the break room because the conference room was busy. And then I, you know, got a few things done and I took off because I have nowhere to sit over there.
That's amazing. You're the first CEO I've talked to that didn't have an office on this show, and that's and your guest 151. So that should say something, man. I really like that that thought process, because I have talked to a lot of tradespeople, people in the trades today, and freedom is something that they talk about, right? Not being cooped up in an office and being able to be in a different place every single day, and no job is the same, right? And so it's kind of cool and unique, John, that you've carried that philosophy with you, you know, whether it was intentional or not. You've carried that philosophy with you and still practice it today, even as CEO of the company. So I commend you for that. That is a really cool way to be.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
So okay. So you bought a plumbing franchise. You did that for about 20 years. There wasn't a ton of growth in that, so you sold the franchise.
I mean, there was growth, but it wasn't going to get me to the next level. You know, we were their largest franchisee at one time, and then, you know, I sold and got out, but it just wasn't like, they had a lot of franchisees and a lot of, if we wanted to grow like further, I would have to like buy other franchisees out, and I did, but what was happening is that, you know, every time they would find out that John wanted to buy the franchise, the price would go up. And a lot of these guys were small business owners that thought their business was worth way more money than it actually was. Like, give you an example, there was this one market I wanted to go to. Company was doing probably a couple million in revenue, had very little profits. You know, I went and approached them, looked at the business, you know, they wanted to sell it. They didn't really like the business. The husband was the plumber. He died. The wife took the business over, and then the son was running it, and he hated the business. So I'm like, all right, you know, like I'll buy your franchise from you. I gave them an offer, and they're like, oh, this is ridiculous. I'm like, why? He goes, no, we want like $5 million for it. I go, I mean, the return on investment, you know, you got a $200,000 profit. I mean, how the heck do you think I'm going to get an ROI on this thing at $5 million? I mean, this is like who I was dealing with. And
oh boy,
yeah, I'm like, this isn't going to work. You know, I have to like have the ability to open up locations wherever I want to, because if I have to buy franchises, you know, in order for me to grow, I mean, this is going to be a very painful and slow process, because I'm not going to be able to find people with, you know, that are motivated to sell because they think it's worth more than what it actually is worth.
Yeah. So it was limiting. So it was really, you know, you had a hard time. You had a hard time growing the way that you wanted to grow, in other words.
Yeah. And I had a non-compete with the franchisor, so I couldn't really open my own business, you know. So it was like a very difficult area. And they kept urging me to buy other franchises, like, yeah, why don't you buy one of our electrical franchise, or one of our, you know, window cleaning franchise, or one of our painting franchise. And I didn't want to do that. I'm like, you know, I'd rather just become really good at one thing and just be the best at this one thing, instead of trying to become, you know, a master of many things. Because that was my philosophy back then, and it's my philosophy today. We're going to do something. We're going to be great at one or two things. We don't need to be great at everything, you know. There's other people that could be great at that. Let's just stick to what our core strength is and work on that.
Yeah, that's some really good advice, and I hope my listeners out there are taking note. You know, that's a very important philosophy that we talk about from time to time on this show. You know, about about not slipping into the trap of being a jack of all trades, master of none, right? It's, that's
Yeah.
a slippery slope, especially in these industries, because, it is easy, whether you're in a franchise or whether you're, doing, you're in the commercial space or even the residential space, when you're doing plumbing to get into HVAC or electrical, because in your mind, you can justify it. It can make sense if you want it to make sense. But
Right.
oftentimes you spread yourself too thin, and then, your resources that could be allocated to the thing that you're really good at are now spread to the things that maybe you're not. And yeah, so it's, I think that's a really important advice. And I hope everybody out there is listening and taking notes.
Yeah. With that being said, I mean, we did add HVAC just recently to our business. And, I have meetings with my management team, and I told my COO and CFO and even our director of HVAC operations, listen, if we can't be great at this, then let's just stop now. Okay. Because I don't want to get into it unless we're going to be the best in the market. And, we had to take some time to think about who we are, how we do things. How is this going to fit within our organization? Is this going to be another distraction, or are we going to just be the best? And my team believes that we could be really the best out there when it comes to that. So we added it, but we didn't add it everywhere. We only added it in units where we have the management team that could support it and could actually grow it. And we feel like we could double the size of our business just with the amount of units that we have out there and the amount of customers that we serve by doing residential HVAC. So now we're in the residential HVAC business. But, we're not going to jump into electrical until we become the best at the HVAC and believe that we are the best at it. And then at that point, then we could soul search again and see if there's another thing we could add. But one at a time, total focus, be the best at it, make sure it's growing, make sure it's profitable, and then jump into another, service if we have to.
Yeah. And then the people, right? I mean, the people, having the correct people in place to be able to facilitate those decisions and run those portions of the business is key.
Absolutely.
Very good. Very good. So we talked a little bit before the show. I know that you've written a couple of books about the industry or in the industry. I want to ask you about those in a minute. But before I ask you specifically about the books, I want to ask you where the hell you found time to write them.
I really enjoy working. Like I said, my dad taught us a lot of good work ethics, and I feel like whatever I'm doing is my calling. And so I don't really look at it like work, and I don't believe in like work-life balance. I believe in, I've told my wife, I believe in work-life integration. Like, we could have fun and work at the same time. It's not like we have to like stop taking calls from people that need us in order for us to like say, okay, I'm not going to work because I'm going to force myself to have fun. Working is fun. Okay. So if the phone rings and somebody needs help and we got to, like take the call, let's take the call. Yeah. So you have to believe that, that's how you find the time. And the books I was writing, like some of it is for some of the staff that, for our employees that work in our company. Some of it is for the trades. I wrote a book for my two boys. I have two sons. My oldest son is Andrew, he's 21, and my youngest son, Christian, 17. I wanted them to know the journey of their dad and their ancestors, like where we came from. We're from Armenia. I was born in Armenia, and our parents came from a lot of hardship, our grandparents, my parents, and ancestors. And I put a lot of those stories in one of the books and wrote it for my kids. And, when they read it and, the book was out, and the guy that helped me publish it, he's like, John, this book is really good. I think you should put it on Amazon and not just keep it for your family. I said, all right, I'll put it out there. So I just put it out there. My wife wasn't too happy because she's like, you're exposing all your skeletons out of your closet. It's not, but I put it out there, and whoever read it said it's a great book. They learned a lot from it. So that's how it all came together. Some for the industry, some for my kids. And at this point, I'm not writing anything, but, just working on growing the business and,
Wow.
That's my attention right now.
Well, you know what though, I really, you and I are cut from a very similar cloth. I say all the time, you know, work-life balance isn't necessarily the philosophy that I follow either. It is more of the work-life integration, although I never really had a name for it, you know. But similar to your mindset is it can commingle, right? And you know, you can find that balance in both without the separation. Is
Yeah.
my thing, and there's extreme value in that, especially if you're passionate about what it is that you're doing, which I can clearly tell that you have a passion, you know, for what you do, you know, and maybe it's not so much the plumbing, but maybe I think I'm detecting, you know, you have a passion for growth. You have a passion for, you know, development, whether that personal or even other people, right? You said at the beginning of the podcast, you like to help people grow in business. So I think I'm detecting a little bit of that in some of what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe in growth. I believe in, you know, like even our company. I mean, I believe we need to keep growing in order to provide more opportunities to people, right? You know, if you're not growing, new doors aren't opening up. So I feel like I'm obligated to keep the company going and growing in order for me to provide more opportunities for the people that are there, that are putting me on their shoulders and lifting me up to the level that we're at, you know, because I didn't do this alone. I mean, you know, I've had so much help from not only people that I work with, but people in the industry, you know, friends, family. I mean, just there's been a lot of help and support, you know, so I feel like I need to give that back. And today, you know, I try to mentor as many young entrepreneurs as possible. I've got a friend of mine who passed away, and his son is one of my students that I meet with regularly. And then, you know, I want to be an inspiration to my kids. You know, I try to be an example to them. So do the things I tell them, you know, that should be done. Because they're seeing me more than they're hearing me. You know, so make sure that my words and my actions align.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
Wow.
Growth is definitely important to me.
Very good. So I've got a question. And you know, it's kind of it's sparked by just your personality and how you're talking about your business and the people. In this industry, we know that it is becoming more and more difficult to find people who are interested in the trades, right? Or people who are already in the trades. You know, we talk a lot about how for every, you know, I think the number is up to 7 or 8. For every 7 or 8 people that are retiring from these industries, one person comes in, and so it can be tough. And I'm a big proponent that culture can reverse this trend, right? I mean, it's culture and organizations are so important, right? The best recruiters that we have are the people that work in our business. So the question for you is kind of twofold. What's the culture like in your business, and how are you finding, you know, people to support your growth?
So we do have a recruiter that helps us recruit, but we're not only looking for people with experience. We have a Hero University, which is, you know, people that we can bring in that don't have experience and teach them the trades, you know, so we're taking it upon ourselves to create the need. I mean, you know, we're 500 plus people in the company now. I could use another 200 right now.
Yeah.
I mean, like literally, you know, we have the work. We're you know, 1 out of every 4 customers we can't even service. We can't even get to. So we can't build them fast enough.
Yeah.
In order for us to fulfill the needs that are out there. But, you know, we're just doing the best we can as far as building people, from, you know, like getting young, motivated people that want to come in and then teaching them. And it's funny because we can take a person and within 6 months to 8 months, if they're really, you know, like willing to put the time and energy to learn, make more money than they will if they go to college for 4 to 5 to 6 years.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we've got young students coming out making over $100,000 6 months out of Hero University. I mean, that's really difficult from what I hear nowadays with, even people coming out of, 4 or 5 year colleges or even getting masters and certain things.
Oh yeah, 100%. That's we talk about that a lot, and I'm not sure if you're aware, but I wrote an industry book as well. It's called Blue is the New White, and it does a lot of these comparisons. Because we often hear that the starting wage of somebody who graduates college is much less than somebody who has been in the trades for the same 4 years that person spent in college. So that's the first thing. But then a lot of times, people don't do the additional math, right? Where sometimes it costs you upwards of $100,000 for this college education, 75% of which is usually supplemented by some sort of a student loan, right? So now you've got $75,000 in debt that you're also paying off while making this smaller wage when you were paid to learn in a skilled trade under an apprenticeship, right? So there's all these different areas that not everybody is aware of, when it comes to this. And that old rhetoric of you got to go to college, you got to go to college, you got to go to college, it seems less and less important. Now, again, this is all dependent on the ROI, right? If you want to be a doctor, please don't turn to YouTube. If you want to be, you got to go to college, right? And so, but that's where the whole, the right education for the right individual comes in. And we have to tell this story about the skilled trades, about how lucrative it can be, right? And I think that that's a big part of the recruitment that you talked about.
Yeah, so, I mean, I have 2 sons. Like my oldest son, he's in university, and he wants to go to university. He wants to get his master's, and he wants to do that. And he's a really good student. I mean, his grades are great. He has a great GPA. I mean, I think he's going to be great. And I don't want to deter him from not going to university. I want to support him and give him, like whatever support he needs to do that. And then my youngest son wants to go as well, but he's like, yeah, I don't know if I want to get into the trades. Maybe I do. I'm too young to figure it out right now. I'm like, you're right. I mean, just listen, there's no rush. Finish high school, think about what you want to do. If you want to get in the trades, go to Hero University. We'll teach you. You can work in the business. You can learn a lot of the stuff, or you can go to college and, you can take the university route. And even if you find out halfway there that you want to get in the trades, it's still not too late. You can still come in. Just don't wait until you're like 40 years old to find out what to do, figure this all out between, like in your early 20s, and you're good.
There you go. Don't tell him that Colonel Sanders finally sold his chicken recipe at 70 years old. He doesn't need to hear that. All right. But no, that's really good advice. And I hope everybody listening out there is taking note. It is, that is in my opinion, right? I'm just one guy, and we're just a couple guys talking, but in my opinion, that is a very, very good way to support, the tomorrow's workforce, whether they're your kids or not. And, I think that's really important. So couple more questions. I want to move to some advice before we wrap up the show, and, see if we can get some of that incredible knowledge that I know you got stored up there, bud. So 2 pieces of advice. First one would be, and this is broad, so do your best, okay? But biggest piece of advice in starting a business and biggest piece of advice in growing a business.
Start it for the right reason, okay? Because I've seen so many people start a business all for the wrong reasons. I mean, they start a business because they're pissed off at their employer. They're upset about, something that's happening, and they think they could change it. And they start a business to find out that, it's harder to work for themselves than somebody else. And, I've seen so many businesses fail. I mean, the statistics shows that, what is that? Like almost 8 out of 10 businesses fail in the first 5 years. I mean, I used to remember the number, and then the other 50% fail between 5 and 10 years, right? So there's like almost 80 or 90% of the businesses that start up are gone. And that's only because most people started for the wrong reason. They start a business because they hate who they work for, or they hate, having to do certain things, but start it for the right reason. And to grow a business, grow it for the right reason also. There's too many businesses that are out there that are lifestyle businesses, where people start a business and it's basically to create the kind of lifestyle they want. Start a business to make a difference, not to create a lifestyle. You could create a lifestyle doing many things, okay? But do it to make a difference, to make a positive impact on the environment, a positive impact in the industry, positive impact for consumers. Like, start it for a purpose and grow it for a purpose.
Yeah. No, I think that's more good advice, man. I could sit here and talk to you for hours, but unfortunately this isn't the Joe Rogan podcast, maybe one day, but man, I just have a feeling that you've got so much knowledge up there waiting to be tapped. And I mean, it's amazing. I can't say enough. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm not completely done yet, but just want to express my gratitude, because this is some really great information that I think is going to help a lot of people who are listening to this show. All right, so a couple more questions. You said you're an avid reader, right? Could you give us maybe top 3 books, something that really resonated with you?
We just went through the sequel of Jim Collins again. We have a book club at our company, and all of the leaders, and we invite everybody, but most of the leaders show up, and it's mandatory for them. But we just went through Good to Great, Built to Last. I read How the Mighty Fall, which is also, but I would say, that bettered my life as a person. The Dale Carnegie books that I read with my son, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
That's my number 1 all-time favorite book right there.
I love it. I've read it with my 2 boys probably 4 or 5 times. And then we just keep going to that book, because it never, like, the philosophies and the principles in that book never, it just continues to, you get nuggets on it all the time.
What was it, written in the 30s or 40s or something like that? And it's still just as pertinent today as it was then. You don't find a whole lot of books like that.
Yeah, definitely. The Slight Edge was a book that really changed my life. It's about how the little things make a big difference. So we go back to The Slight Edge. And, those are some of the ones that come to mind. I mean, The Good to Great, Built to Last from Jim Collins, just really good books about, how some of the businesses that are, really great businesses that beat the stock market, what they did, what the leadership is like in companies like that. So it's just a lot of, great stuff that, we take and apply.
Good. Yeah, a lot of my listeners are always asking for book recommendations. So whenever anybody on this show says that they love to read, I got to make sure I ask. And those are some great recommendations. I love all of those books. Last question for you, and then I'll let you go. I know you're a busy guy, even though you don't have an office. So
that's why I'm in my car right now.
I know it's all coming together now. I'm starting to understand. So, okay, we talk a lot about success on this show, and I think I even alluded to it earlier, to where, different people have different definitions of success. And, what I like to say is that the skilled trades, in, out, and around, however you get involved with the skilled trades, whether you're in them, whether you're a business owner, whether you serve the trades, they can all help you live whatever your definition of success is. So I'm going to ask you, John, what is your definition of success, and how have the trades, the skilled trades, helped you achieve it?
Oh, that's a great question, Josh. I got to think about that for a moment. So my definition of success is I guess, what I look at is I want to be a good example to my kids. And I want to be a good example to the people around me. So my definition of success is to do the right thing, even when people aren't watching, continue to better myself, my life, and continue to influence other people to get better as well. That's my definition of success. It has nothing to do with like money or fame or anything else, because I don't really care about that kind of stuff. I mean, even those are like byproducts of doing things well and being, like fully committed and doing stuff. So I guess, that would be my success. I want to be, I want to be like 100 years old one day, and I want to like look back in my life and go, you know what, I did my best. I did my best for the people around me. I did my best for my kids. I did my best for my wife. I was a good husband. I was a good father. I was good to the people that I work with. And I was a good citizen of the United States. I've done the best I can, to leave a positive mark on this world. And that's my definition of success.
I love that. It's very, very well put. I appreciate that, John. Thank you. All right. So before we wrap it up, where can people find you? Where can people find Rooter Hero?
Just if you're looking for any of my books, you go to Amazon, just type my name, John Akhoian, John, last name Akhoian. A lot of the books will come up. I also have them on Audible. So if you type my name in Audible, it'll come up. I'm on LinkedIn under my name, John Akhoian. Facebook, John Akhoian. And our website for our company is www.rooterhero.com. That's ROOTERHERO.com. And if you go to the About Me page, my cell phone number is in there under the CEO's message. If you want to call me on my cell, you're welcome to. My email's there. I'm very easy to get a hold of. I've got my cell phone number behind every business card, and I guarantee all of our customers that if you're not happy, call me on my cell phone. It's our job to make you happy. So, I'm awesome. Very easy to love.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that, John. Thank you so much for coming on this show and sharing all your valuable wisdom with our listeners, man. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Josh, for taking the time to ask me the questions.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon, sir.